Hi, this is Guy Hebert. Yes, I know you know. And I am a former NHL goaltender, and I am the mask in the mask and the mic.
Yes, and I'm Kent French. I really don't know where I fit in this equation, although I am the mic. I'm a broadcaster, still trying to be a broadcaster, and this is the Mask and the Mic podcast. Gibo, focus of attention is what you have on your hat. For those listening and not watching at home, it is about the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Go Ducks. Tremendous series so far. By the time this airs, we'll know what Game 5 situation was. So hopefully we're celebrating, moving on to round 2. But nonetheless, a lot of things to talk about. A lot of great things happening here in Anaheim with the Ducks. A lot of excitement. And the fans have been insane at the Honda Center.
Yeah, Gibo's been boots on the ground. He will bring us all the happenings, what he's been seeing and hearing at Honda Center. That and much more happens on the Mask and the Mic. Hope you enjoy the show. And Gibo, as always.
And as always, good for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Mask and the Mic. You guessed it. Kent and Guy back with you. And as you can see by what Mr. Hebert is wearing, this is certainly going to be the topic of conversation for those of you who are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. He has the Anaheim Ducks hat on, and rightfully so. Gibo, I saw you were at the game 3 and Game 4, which took place at Honda Center. I just want to start by asking you, what is the building like after not being in the postseason for 8 years? I mean, it seems electric on TV. It's coming through, but I want to know, what is it like in person to be there?
Well, I'm going to say it is worth the wait for the Ducks fans. It's insanity. It really is. I mean, the energy and the excitement. I've never been to a rink in my life as a fan or a broadcaster, or probably even as a player, where people are at the arena so early and so prepared to be in their seats and ready to go. I mean, it's, you know how Anaheim is, and it's not a knock. I mean, it's a lot of major cities where you get there halfway through the first period, you kind of settle in, you get through traffic. There is nobody. I mean, I was pulling in an hour before the game and couldn't get off a Catella exit. I mean, it took us like 25 minutes just to get off the exit. Yeah. So, I mean, the building's on fire. And, it's funny because this team has started slow all season long. They have these dramatic comebacks. And in the playoffs, they've done much the same. They've started off slow, or they didn't score the first goal. Game 3, they started off, they had a tremendous first period, but did not score early on. And then again, in the Game 4, same thing. Edmonton kind of took a little of the air out of the building, but, I think the fans are so ready for any momentum swings. And that's what happened. I mean, they just keep climbing back, giving the fans a chance to give them that boost of energy. And I know that, there's been players coming out to the media saying, I've never experienced this before. It's my first go around. I'm a youngster. I'm a rookie, or I'm a guy like, even Troy Terry, who's not been able to get into the postseason. And they're like, I've never felt like the adrenaline rush that we're feeling right now. So, credit the fans, because the fans are an X factor, and the Ducks fans are as passionate as anybody else. I mean, I think we're always lost in the shuffle, Frenchie, right? Being West Coast teams, people are sleeping on the East Coast. They don't pay attention to what happens out here. But credit the fans for amazing support. And then, I mean, the Game 4 OT victory, I happened to be sitting behind the net, not right behind, but up above. Yeah. So I had a pretty good view. And I mean, the place was just going bonkers. So it is like, it's incredible to witness. And the fact that I can witness it in those two instances, not even working, just being a fan, was really special. It was special to be able to share that with my wife and some friends, and a lot of alumni were back. So it's amazing how many people come out of the woodwork when the team's better, right? I'm like, I haven't seen you
I
guys. Where have
know.
you been all year long?
You get the celebs come out, you get,
Oh,
yeah,
that
it's
it's
fun. I
packed with
mean,
celebs.
it's a place to be too, right?
Yeah.
A place to be seen, people dressing up, they're having a good time, and it is a scene. And I think everyone over at Honda Center has done a tremendous job making it a scene and the place to be, and it's only gonna get better with OC Vibe and everything growing. It is going to be a place that you wanna get there early and you wanna stay there afterwards. That's kind of the goal. So
Yep.
it's super exciting and so cool. I feel like you're our correspondent, on boots on the
Yeah.
ground, man.
Boots on the ground. Yeah.
You're telling us what's happening. So I will give you the other side of the equation. I was putting in a shift at Green Cheek yesterday.
I'm sure
a-
TVs
a-
were on.
At TV's were on,
Yeah.
but here's
Okay.
the deal. So I get there, 3:30. It is slammed. I mean, I did not stop moving for 2 hours solid, 2.5 hours. And Ducks fans everywhere. People were kind enough to ask if I was going to the game. I said, no, I'm working tonight. I'm working here. People a little
Yeah.
confused, still trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing, especially when the pregame show's on and and it's on
Yeah.
TV
It's
and
like
I'm busting tables.
that's the
And they're going,
secret sauce. We
and
can't
they're
tell
going, "Wha-"
anybody.
and they're looking at me, and I'm like, don't ask,
Yeah.
just don't ask. But it was, Gibo, to your point, it was a ghost town at like 5:30, 5:45. All of a sudden, like,
Yeah.
snap your fingers and everyone's gone. I mean, everybody wanted to get to Honda Center, get there, get ready for the game. They were fired up, ready to go, and certainly a lot to cheer about. To your point, this team falls behind. They've fallen behind in every single game. But I look up, they're down 2, and I'm like, oh, they got them right where they want them. And it's really a true statement. I mean, as we keep
It
talking
is.
about, they are, along with Montreal this season, I think during the regular season, they had the most come from behind wins. So, hey, you got them right where they want them. You keep telling me if it's not broke, don't fix it. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it. I said, okay, Gibo, and certainly that's bode well for them. But what I want you to tell me, because I'm sitting there watching the overtime goal, and what did you see in the arena? What was being told to you about Ryan Poehling's goal, not goal? Because
Yeah.
we didn't have the sound on.
Hey, how much time do we have for this? Because I still think that this is going to be talked about for a long, long time. And I think that, the NHL, I mean, it goes to this. Well, we got to start from scratch, right? We got
All
to
right.
rewind to the actual play with Poehling putting the puck on net.
Okay.
There was traffic in front.
Yep.
The puck
He wins the faceoff, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Ryan wins the faceoff. Yeah. Okay.
Get control. Puck goes to the point, goes back down to Poehling. He knows there's traffic in front. Never a bad idea to put the puck at the front of the net, and it inadvertently hits the defender's skate blade. And then as Tristan Jarry is going down, it's a helpless feeling for a goalie because you're trying to react to the pass coming across. It's going off the foot of your defenseman, and you know that you're kind of in a vulnerable spot. So
you're
you're
just squeezing everything, hoping you
you
can,
are
wherever it's at.
squeezing. And believe me, I was. It's happened many times.
Probably in
right?
your seat, you're doing this.
So I'm clenching. I'm in full clench mode. But so you can see the puck kind of drift toward the goal line. And then you can see their defenders getting the stick on the puck and tapping it back underneath them. And I can see Chris Kreider was the guy that I focused on because Kreider kind of sneaks behind the net and he's just looking down. He's looking down at the net at the goal line. And then he looks at the ref and he's like, that's in. And from our vantage point, no signal from the ref at all. And I've heard people online saying, oh, it was called a goal on the ice. It initially there was no call at all. And they go right to review. And so they talk about it. Then they call the goal. And then all of a sudden, so the pandemonium breaks out. Guys are celebrating. I'm still curious because what we've seen on the Jumbotron that I'm like, listen, I know the rules enough to know that it has to be clear and indisputable.
You have to see
evidence.
White on the other side of the puck, right?
So
yes.
So you can't ever assume oh, it's under the pad, the skate, the glove, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Can you see? It has to be indisputable. So then all of a sudden, we're celebrating with fans. We're heading out of the building. Everybody's woohoo. And as we're exiting the building, all of a sudden on one of the brand new monitors that are at the Honda Center, which is awesome, we see official review. And so we stand there for a little bit and we watch and we're like, okay, I'm like, there's no way they're calling this goal back. So we're like, They're like, "How confident are you?" I'm with some people. And I said, "I'm very confident." They said, "Because if we leave and they still play hockey, we're going to be pissed." And I go, "It's a goal. We're free to go." And so a mob of people head out the door. And as we're walking to the parking lot, then you hear the horn at the Honda Center, obviously saying that it was a goal. And, but listen, I don't really know. We can all assume by looking at all the video that you can see, the pictures that are posted online. The NHL does have other cameras that aren't available to the broadcast. So do they have a different angle that shows that? Are they conferring with the referee on the ice, having him say, "Hey, I know that the picture doesn't show what I saw, but I saw, you know, white between the puck and the goal line." We haven't heard statement from referees saying that. And so it's terrible because it's clouded, right? I mean, it's clouded with there's some uncertainty of well, I mean, any reasonable person could do some measuring on a picture and say, well, that puck is there. You can see it being blocked out, but it's, clearly if the skate wasn't there, you'd see it. But if you go to the rule book, Frenchie, and who wants to be a stickler during the NHL playoffs? Not me, because it's too exciting, but the
Right.
rule book clearly states that you have to have indisputable evidence where you can see the puck clearly over the line with
Mm-hmm.
separation between said puck and red goal line.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very interesting. I'm sure some more will come out about it as today goes on, tomorrow goes on. I'm sure if you're on the Ducks side, hey, it's a goal, it's good. We moved on. It's a 3-1 lead, and hey, what's going to happen in Game 5? If you're an Oilers fan, you're thinking, okay, well, how come the rules don't apply in
Right.
this situation? So, but what a win! Like at the end of the day, uh, listen, I'll give Edmonton credit. Like first period, I was concerned because they were playing a much better game. They rolled the dice by changing their goaltending from Connor Ingram to Tristan Jarry. And Jarry, who has not played well since he's gone from Pittsburgh to Edmonton, hadn't played a game, I think, since early April, like April 6th or April 9th. I think it was just in relief. And they rolled the dice, and he actually responded well. I thought he played well. The Ducks' opportunities that they scored on were just great opportunities, great hard work. Power play was on fire. But I think this is a thing of momentum. I think that the momentum that the Ducks have certainly, and I know we're talking about this before Game 5, Frenchie, and when this airs,
We don't know.
I think we might be talking about something a little different next week. We
Exactly.
can speculate all we want on this show because that's what this all is. But yeah, listen, it was a tremendous game. The Ducks really responded, being down 2-0. I mean, I just think that is the heartbeat of the club, is that we are never out of the fight. We do not panic. We know that we can score goals, and we're going to get our opportunities if we stick to the plan. And before we go any further, I know the controversial goal is the biggest, issue or talking point about the game. For me, how about Lukasz Dostal, our buddy? How about the 2 saves on Connor McDavid late in the third period?
Yep.
McDavid turned on the Jets, turned the D, drove in, and for a goaltender to go that far from his left to his right to be able to extend and get that little push. If he doesn't get that little push, Frenchie, off that
Mm-hmm.
left skate, there's no way he's going to get enough momentum to be able to slide and extend that right leg. And McDavid would have tucked it past that right foot. And so credit him with that. Is, to me, the play of the game. He doesn't become the hero,
Yep.
but that save and then a subsequent save right after that, McDavid again kind of breaking in off that left side of Dostal, and Dostal making another big stop.
Yeah, somebody, we had a few tables last night, still, people that were watching the game, and they're, obviously I told you we didn't have the sound on. They're like, so who's going to win as we went to overtime? And I looked up and I paused for a minute and I thought about the end of the third period. And I thought about the Ducks tying it. They know darn well that they can't lose this game. They don't want to put it in the hands of
No,
McDavid and
no,
Edmonton back at home. They have to win. And the urgency for both teams certainly was there, but for the Ducks, I believed it was more, and I said the Ducks are going to win, and I and and they ended up pulling it out. And I think it's that urgency that we saw
yeah,
that was so much fun to see, and they have so many players that are, it's not just the top line guys, it's the depth. And that's what we're seeing from both teams, by the way. Depth is playing a factor.
Yep.
I do want to touch on McDavid, though, which he is certainly been a storyline. And we went into this thing when we did a pregame show, the very beginning, game number 1 of this series. And I had this fun stat that said when McDavid doesn't find the score sheet, the Oilers do not win. And that was the case in the regular season. They were 0-12-2 when McDavid does not score a goal or an assist. The first 2 games of this series, McDavid did not find the score sheet. Edmonton wins game 1, Ducks win game 2. I was looking at the stats overall for the playoffs. McDavid's tied for 25th with 4 points. What a job they have done on Connor McDavid. Draisaitl is 7 points. He's tied for second. He's shed the rust. He's playing well. But
he's well rested.
Well rested and unrusted. But what's going on with Connor McDavid? Tell me, is it that line of Washi, Moore, and Viel? I mean, have they been that good? Is it a team effort? What have you been seeing that the Ducks have been doing well against Connor McDavid?
Well, I think it partly is these unheralded, untested, unproven, I mean, I talked about it in the pregame show as well. These are 3 players. You got kind of a journeyman, kind of minor leaguers, a little bit up in the NHL in Jeffrey Viel, getting a chance of a lifetime. And he's taking full advantage of that and give him all the credit in the world. I mean, I think that, sometimes when it might be your big chance to make an impact and kind of create a spot for yourself. And he's doing it, playing tough. I mean, he's a grinder. He's playing physical. He fights. He does all the little things. He's responsible in the defensive zone, and he's 100% effort. And that goes for Tim Washi and Ian Moore. I mean, these guys have no NHL experience except for this season. I mean, heck, we talk about Ian Moore, has never played forward in his entire life. Talked to him at pregame skates and stuff, and he's like, no, I've never played forward in my whole life.
Crazy.
And so he's transitioned into the NHL. And these guys, just the chemistry between the 3 of them, they play very simple hockey. They know what to do, and they don't ever try to do too much, but they're being rewarded. But with them playing against McDavid's line, it also includes the defense pair. And I think it's the 5-man unit that's really being effective on Connor McDavid. Well, listen, we all know, he's the best player in the world, and his best asset is his speed. And you talk about trying to contain him, and you're not going to stop him, but you try to contain him the best you can. And the best way to do that, every team goes in with the same plan, is if you can get a hit on him, you hit him. But the best thing to do is you have to keep him to the perimeter, and he's not going to score from the perimeter. And so, but with the speed, he usually can beat guys wide, like we saw in the last game. So you got to do a good job, make sure that you stay in your lanes, keep him outside, try to make him get the other guys involved. And if you take away his options, then all of a sudden you can see what's happened is that you keep him to perimeter, which the Ducks have done. And then he gets frustrated because he can't get to the middle. And then he's like, okay, well, I had, 90 assists or 90 something assists during the regular season. He's going to start looking for Zach Hyman or Evan Bouchard at the point. He's going to look for those options. And the Ducks have done a really nice job for the most part, making sure that the passing lanes are covered and that he doesn't really have too many options. So I just see a very frustrated player who kind of feels the weight of the world on his shoulders once again. And I think when you get there, he's trying to do too much on his own. And the Ducks have been able to feed off of that. They're like, okay, he's going to try to beat 2 of us here. We can make sure that, he's not going to beat us.
Well, here's what's been impressive to me is when you are, focusing on one player, right? And you want to play physical, but you're taking on a team that has the best power play in the National Hockey League, especially when you get Draisaitl and McDavid on the ice together, right?
Yeah.
So the discipline that the Ducks have shown has been incredible. In 3 of the 4 games, Edmonton has only had 2 power play opportunities, which is awesome. The other time they had 4 and they were 0 for 4 on the power play. So they're 3 for 10, if my math is correct. On the other side of the equation, the Ducks, how about 6 for 12? Now, did we see that coming? Like the disparity there and the shift when it comes to the man advantage and what the Ducks are doing and what Edmonton is not doing. I mean, there are so many games within the game. You said that in one of our
Yeah.
pregame shows earlier. This is certainly one of those that was, hey, stay out of the box. But on the other side of the equation, hey, let's draw some penalties and score some power play goals. And that's been the case for the Ducks. I mean, that certainly has been something that's really stood out to me.
Special teams are such a key. I mean, you win and lose games because of special teams, and mostly in the playoffs, it's going to come down. I mean, the games are all close, even if they're high scoring. A lot of games are 1-goal games or they're overtime games. So
except for the Ducks, except for the
yeah. I mean,
except for these games.
I mean, these games are close. I mean, they're 6-4 or 6-5,
right?
whatever. So it's not a 2-1 game, but still, it's a game where it's tight at the score at the end of the night. I just think that they've been, really good on the power play with getting a lot of net front traffic. They're getting redirects on pucks that are coming from the point. They're passing. They're being, I guess the best thing is they're being very decisive. There's not a lot of hesitation. You could see during the regular season when they were struggling, it was a lot of perimeter passing. Everybody was kind of reluctant to shoot the puck at the net. And I think that right now, when you start to get some good mojo and you feel confident and you see the puck going in the net and you make these passes, Cutter Gauthier with one-timers, McTavish getting to the front of the net for tips and screen goals. And then you got, the good shots from the point. You got Leo Carlsson. So, I mean, there's a lot of threats that the Ducks have on that power play. And it is. I just think it always boils down to the fact that when you feel confident and you feel like you got a team on their heels, and they start to guess. So that's what Edmonton, I think, has done in their penalty kill, is that they're starting to guess. I think that they lost some confidence in their goaltending, so they sometimes try to do too much. So even when you try to block a shot, if you're not fully committed, a lot of times all that does is screen your goaltender. And you could see a couple times where they were going down, trying to block shots from the Ducks and unintentionally screening their own goaltender. But yeah, the confidence is a key, but nobody would have seen this. I mean, I was like, listen, to me, the key factor in this entire series is discipline. They cannot let that number 1 rated NHL power play get on the board. I mean, just see so many times, McDavid to Draisaitl to Hyman, the Bouchard, the one-timer from the point. It's deadly. Last game, we saw how deadly it can become, right? They had couple opportunities. They made good on those. I was concerned in that first period because I said, okay, this is how Edmonton starts to go. They start capitalizing on their power play. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you get behind, you start chasing the game, you start taking too many chances, and then that opens up the game in a bad way. But yeah, special teams, give the Ducks tons of credit. They're very prepared. They're making those changes and adjustments like you mentioned. And it's the game within the game. And I think that, the coaching staff loves to be able to pick apart another team and say, okay, we've discovered something through the video, or players coming back to the bench and saying, hey, when I cut to the middle, Ekholm is dropping down a little too quick. It's opening up a seam pass because the stick's now in the wrong position. I can slide that through the box over to Cutter for a one-timer. So there's so many great little nuances to the game and these special teams that if you're a fan, I mean, you can really dive deep into these things and kind of enjoy kind of the cat and mouse games that they're playing.
And I'm not comparing these two as a player positionally on a power play is what I'm doing here, because Cutter obviously has a ways to go in his career to be in any sort of conversation when it comes to Ovechkin. And you know where I'm going with this.
Sure. Yeah.
Sits at the dot, has his stick back, and has the wicked one-timer. He's on that second power play unit. He just missed it last night. He missed a goal. He looked into the heavens. Yeah, right. But on the power play, here's something you don't see every day. You mentioned coaching staff, and you and I again touched on this last week. Jay Woodcroft. How often do you have a former head coach of the team we're taking on in the Stanley Cup playoffs, who's only a couple years removed from that team, so he knows the personnel very well, including the number 1 player and the number 2 players, arguably in the National Hockey League. He is now on your team running your power play unit. And right now, as I mentioned, clicking at 50%. I mean, it's been fun to watch Jay go to work.
Oh, yeah.
And I can only imagine, you talk about picking apart And now it's not just a one-off game, right? So now you're in a series, and now the coaches get to dive into tendencies and dive into stats and dive into analytics. It has been, I can't imagine what those conversations are like with Jay, other players. I mean, if I'm in that room and I'm a player for the Ducks, I'm like, all right, Jay, come over here. I want to hear everything about McDavid. What does he do? What does
Yeah,
he doesn't do? What are
exactly.
tendencies? I mean, picking his brain. This is a unique situation the Ducks are in. Certainly a unique advantage, I would think the Ducks are in.
A huge advantage. And it was interesting. I talked to some people and they're like, okay, if you watch Jay Woodcroft on the bench, watch him watch Draisaitl and McDavid. He's expressionless and he's staring them. And he's not, and what I was told is he's not, he's not staring them down.
Sure.
What he's doing is he's looking to get any kind of sense of their emotion because he's been with them as a head coach. He knows when they're confident and, getting ready to take that next step and take over the game. But he also knows when they're pissed off or they're frustrated or any and all of that. So the talk about, again, peek behind the curtain of a coach who once coached these
Yeah.
world-class players is that he's looking for any edge. He's looking at them and going, okay, I know his mindset right now because I've seen it when I've stood on the bench coaching him. So I think that's another incredible, valuable piece of information that Jay Woodcroft can certainly, absorb as he sits on the bench and watches these games in real time and then be able to pass that down to the other coaches and the players to say like, hey, I've seen this before. We got him right where we want him. He's really frustrated. Now he's going to try to beat you one-on-one. So I think that's it's an intangible advantage, and it's another layer to how great the playoffs are when you have, some kind of familiarity with the opposition.
Well, and you go back to the beginning of the season too, right? When Coach Q comes over, and then it is an all-star coaching staff for the Anaheim Ducks. And what Pat brought on under Q, that I mean, these coaches are top notch. Nothing, taking nothing away from the coaches we had in the past, but former head coaches and it seems like it's paying off right now. So it's this again, layers and layers upon layers about how things can affect the game itself. You mentioned the one-on-one matchup. I saw a play by Jackson LaCombe against McDavid, and he followed him into the corner, skating backwards, turn, and he put his hip into him, and he literally didn't use his hands, but used the strength of his body to kind of push McDavid down
Yeah.
and get him out of the play, separate him from the puck. Just shows the strength of that young man. What he has been able to do, you got, Pat signs him to an 8-year extension. And I don't know if a lot of people were questioning that, but that's a big deal for a young man who's just getting into the National Hockey League. But if I told you the beginning of the playoffs that Jackson LaCombe, after 4 games, would lead the NHL in points, what would you say, Guy Hebert? Leading forwards and defensemen.
Yeah.
He is leading everybody in points with 8.
I probably would have said I wouldn't think he'd be leading the NHL in points, but I would have said that he would probably be up, up toward the top just because he's logging 25 plus minutes a night. He's so instrumental on the power play. The amount of ice time that he gets and the fact that he's always pushing the pace and getting the puck up the ice. I mean, he's constantly coming up the ice with speed, getting involved in the offense. And I think that, when you do that, you're putting yourself in a position to, whether it's the primary or secondary assist, you're kind of leading the charge into the offensive zone, moving the puck and getting it to, some of your prime goal scorers. So, it's funny. I've heard a lot of people all of a sudden wake up and realize that, hey, there's this guy, Jackson LaCombe. Like, he's pretty good. Again, I think it's another West Coast bias.
Right.
And people say, no, there's not. There is a West Coast bias. West Coast teams just don't get the recognition or the TV time that the East Coast teams get. But when you become a good franchise and a Stanley Cup playoff franchise and a Stanley Cup contender, all of a sudden that dynamic certainly changes. But Jackson LaCombe is turning out to be the player that they had hoped, without a doubt. I mean, you're talking about his size, which people underestimate, but his
Yes.
strength, certainly people underestimate. His skating ability, is as good as anybody in the league. I mean, I look at him and, it was funny. I saw another podcast with our pal Chris Pronger on it, and they were talking about like, who's this Jackson LaCombe guy or whatever. And he's like, listen, he goes, not right now. And I totally believe Prong's on this. Next year, and as he continues to develop, I mean, Jackson LaCombe is going to be a guy like Cale Makar being talked about for the Norris Trophy every single year moving forward. So I think he's got that high of a ceiling, and he's just such a humble kid, loves the game, works incredibly hard. And I think sometimes, people think things come easy to you, but he's a student of the game, and he makes sure he pays attention to the opponents that he's going to play against, and what, he can expose defensively and offensively. And I mean, he's a goaltender's dream, really,
Yeah.
because, he's just going to be on the ice all the time. And, the pairing with him and Jacob Trouba is a great part of that shutdown line against, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, whoever they need to be out there, because Trouba really brings that big physicality, certainly while Radko Gudas is out of the lineup.
Technically sound is something certainly describe Jackson LaCombe, right? And we mentioned, not taking penalties, knock on wood, moving forward, but certainly, I go back to that play. It was so impressive to watch what he was able to do against the best player in the world, who is so strong on his skates, and was able to take
Not
him and
easy.
move him off the puck. No, and I don't think people understand, the difficulty of the play and the perfection in execution that he was able to make happen. So it's just watching these guys evolve too. I mean, this series is a learning experience. 13 Anaheim Ducks entered this series with Edmonton with no playoff experience, and they are growing before our very eyes. And two, LaCombe, and you were there on Friday, to be able to do what he did on the empty netter to seal the game.
Yeah.
Like, he held the puck for what seemed like 5 minutes, and he kind of held it, and then he went the length of the ice about 150 feet and put it in the back of the net. So he's been able to do a little bit of both, but he shows no panic. And you're seeing it in these kids. I call them kids, but as the series goes on, they are becoming more comfortable with the moment. And I think that's going to play, huge dividends. They're up 3-1 now. It's going to pay huge dividends moving forward in this postseason.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to look at like youth and, inexperience when you go into the playoffs, right? At first, I think there's a great balance on this team between experienced veterans and the youth. Like, youthful enthusiasm goes a long way, right? Because the guys are hyped up, they're ready to go. I mean, almost to the point where the veterans have to kind of rein them in a little bit so that they don't, burn too much of energy, right? I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes the fear is you're so hyped up and ready to go, like you just get gassed early in that first period, and then you don't really have anything left in the tank. The other thing about youthful, inexperienced players is that think about golf. Like, when you play golf and you're coming onto the PGA Tour, you've been great at every level you played, and you just have these expectations to continue to be great. And you can be, because you have no scar tissue, right? You haven't had these devastating losses, or you have, right? So when you build up scar tissue, when you get in those moments where you need to perform, make that one chip or putt or drive or whatever it is, or in hockey, you got to make that good pass or that big save. The longer you play, unfortunately, you build up scar tissue of negative response. And, the best players in the world are always able to kind of keep that at bay. But I think for this team, these guys are all like, well, why wouldn't I score in overtime? Or why wouldn't I score on this power play? And
don't know any better.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, who are they? Right. I mean, we're better than they are. So I think it's that, I think, coupled with, some really great veterans. I think about how great a signing of some of the players Pat Verbeek got. I think about Mikhail Granlund. I talk about, Adam Henrique back in the day, the Swiss Army knife. He can do anything. And Granlund, to me, is just like that. You can put him in any position, right? Power play, penalty kill. I mean, even strength. He's got a great nose for the net. He knows how to finish. I mean, he's just an indispensable pickup for this team for this season. And, not to mention the other guys that were included. I mean, the Ryan Poehling move that moved a popular player, Trevor Zegras, out and brought Poehling in. But I mean, what Poehling brings is incredible speed, great PK, threat on the penalty kill to score shorthanded, which he has done. I think that puts a lot of pressure on Edmonton and their power play, knowing that there's a guy out there, throw Leo Carlson out there too on a penalty kill with that threat of speed. So, right now, I mean, the Ducks have, and I said it before the playoffs started, I was like, nobody wants to play the Ducks. And that was, even during their slide at the end of the season where they were kind of limping into the playoffs, and was like, I'm like, is this a telling sign that they've kind of, run out of gas here at the end of the season, that they're going to just get to the playoffs, be happy and satisfied to get to the playoffs? Because it does happen, right? You play 82 games. There are expectations for this team by the organization, ownership, fans, got to get to the playoffs. And then they got, hey, we made it. We accomplished our goal. And then you take that deep breath and you let your guard down, and all of a sudden you just get, blown out in the first round. That is not the case here, which is wonderful to see from all of our perspectives, that like this team wants more. And when you get a taste of winning, Frenchie, like it doesn't matter in what league. I don't care if you're playing pickup with, your buddies in the street, or you're playing one-on-one basketball against your brother. Everybody likes to win. And so when you get that ball rolling and that momentum rolling, I mean, you start to think like, okay, we don't want to look too far down the road, but we want to finish Edmonton off, next game. And then we want to see who our next opponent is, because we feel like we can beat anybody. And I think that's a great sign for this young team, is that they just, we joke about Ted Lasso all the time. We've done it for years at the set in the pregame show, believe. And this team has that belief that like they can beat anybody, because at the end of the day, it's who scores more goals than the other team. And this team has that scoring depth that they haven't had in years.
Just get in. Right? Just get into the
Get in, yeah.
postseason. Anything can happen, because the beauty of hockey is everything's a 7-game series, right?
Yep.
So it's you grow and develop as the series goes on, as we're seeing the Anaheim Ducks doing. And I want to hit on one thing you said about Ryan Poehling too. You and please give me a little insight into this. But when you have superstars, right, on your team, but not everybody is going to get all the ice time. Not everybody is going to score all the goals. You played with two of the best in Korean Solani, but you have to have guys that are acceptant to other roles on this team. And I think Ryan Poehling, the signing there, and a lot of people were, based on who they traded away in Zegras,
Sure,
they were like, well, what are we getting here? But it wasn't, they weren't trading one dynamic player for another. They were trading a dynamic player for somebody who could fit a role and fill a need in a fourth line, third line center,
yeah,
in Ryan Poehling. And you need to have those role players, and those are as important, if not more important than your stars sometimes. Because those guys are the guys that aren't going to be, double team, triple team, whatever it is, and they're going to be, looked upon to produce. I want you to tell me how that works, in a room, on the ice, when you talk about role players that come in and know, and how important that is to know what their role is and do it at a high level.
That's how you create a winning atmosphere and a championship team, is that you have to get players who fit in a specific role on your team. We kind of joke, you always would sit around the locker room, and when kind of those role players would get outside of their lane, guys in the locker room would call them out and say like, hey, know your role. Because it's like, your role isn't to score goals. Your role is to make sure that you check the top line, or your
Right.
role is to make sure that, you're killing penalties, or your role is X, Y, or Z. And, I mean, sometimes everybody does get out of their role occasionally because, hey, they're feeling good, maybe scored a couple goals, and they're like, hey, I'm a goal scorer now, right? And it's like, okay, no, that's make sure you stay in your lane. And I think it's important that, if you look at any championship team in any sport, you think about the balance throughout a lineup, whether it's, specifically hockey, obviously, you got to roll 4 lines, no pun intended, right? But you have to have 4 lines that can play in the playoffs. And you know that your top lines are going to face their best checkers, right? So they're going to try to shut down the top line, much like our team is doing. So where does that fall to goal scoring? Sometimes it falls to like, can our third line beat their third line? Can our fourth line beat their fourth line? And if that happens, then you eventually win the game, right? So you have a guy like Ryan Poehling, and I think that, when Pat was looking for, how does he create, you're thinking about some of the young stars. You got, Cutter, you got Leo, you got Troy Terry, you got Granlund, you got all of a sudden this kid Beckett Seneca who just rolls in and has a rookie year of his life, and creates a spot where, like, okay, we've got another high flying power forward. Well, we just can't have, four lines of those guys because there's just not enough time to share. And I think that's the thing, is that all of a sudden you start to balance that out with role players. And I honestly think that that's why Jeffrey Viel has fit in so well into this team, is that's what he does. He's just going to do what he's told and not do anything different. And oh, by the way, if you had told me after 4 games in this series that Jeffrey Viel would have more goals than Connor McDavid, I would have probably lost. I would have lost a big bet with you. But that's the
A
thing,
lot of people would have.
you know.
Yeah. It's
But
oh
that's
my
because
gosh.
he's doing what he's supposed to do, and then the same with any of those guys. I mean, Ryan Poehling certainly comes to the forefront of being such a great acquisition because yes, you let go of a superstar, but at the end of the day, are you like, okay, we actually came out on top in a way because, this guy fits into our team and our
Hmm.
team chemistry and where we want to go. That, like you said, you can't have 4 lines of superstars because eventually, nobody can share one puck that many times.
What is the emotional lift like in a dressing room when a said role player goes out there and makes a huge impact and does a little bit more? Because you can have your stars, you kind of expect those guys to score goals. Jeffrey Viel goes out on game 3. He basically takes the penalty that leads to a power play goal. Then he comes back and he scores a goal. Oh, and he has a fight near the end of the game. He also had a Gordie Howe hat trick that game. And then you have Poehling doing what he's doing, and in that the shutdown line, a Washi VL, and more. What what type of emotion does that drum up in a room when you kind of look down the line and go, "Damn, everybody's stepping up right now."
Yeah. Well, it's all about respect, and you want to perform for your teammates, and nobody wants to be that guy who makes a mistake that leads to a goal that ends up in a loss. So I think that awareness is heightened. I mean, right now, I mean, everybody is trying to make sure they take care of all the fine details, and it's whether the role players are doing their job and they're doing it incredibly well. I think about VL scoring from his backside in game 4, just hard work, finishing his check, gets to the front of the net and is able to score a goal. But I think that when those guys come back to the bench, I mean, the scorers are so excited for them to be rewarded for all their hard work, kind of the dirty work that the guys have to
Yeah,
do. I
absolutely.
mean, think about, Viel getting in the scrap at the end of game 3, making sure that he's standing up for his teammates. Just any of the guys doing those little things. I mean, it galvanizes the team. It brings you closer together. It makes you want to sacrifice more for your teammates. A guy comes off having a great shift. You're like, okay, when I get on the ice, man, I got to have as good a shift as that guy just had. Or if your goaltender makes a huge save, you're like, man, he bailed us out on that one. Let's go get Dosty a goal, right? So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
what really brings the team together. And I think that the closeness that you get when you're at war in the playoffs, I mean, during the regular season, very similar. But when you're playing that best of 7 and, first team to 4 moves on and you don't want to be the team going home for the summer, it's amazing how that brings the team so much closer.
I ask you that question too because sitting there as I'm watching it on TV and they're waiting to figure out who in the hell, if it's a goal or not a goal in overtime, game number 4, just Paling, just the teammates around Paling, and just the sheer joy that it was him. Knowing, as you mentioned, you put in the hard work, the dirty work, so to speak, and it was him that was the guy. So that was pretty damn cool to see. You could see them all kind of rallying around him, and it was just a fun moment for the team, and obviously, I mean, my God, for the fans as well. But before we close shop here a couple things. One is, and apparently I'm stat guy today. I don't know why. I was looking at some stats. So
Better
Jo-
you than me today.
John Carlson, right?
Yep.
He has the hardest shot in the playoffs so far. And I don't think I knew this about him. Veteran, savvy veteran, Stanley Cup winner coming into the team. How about 102.72 miles an hour? Next closest, 97.45. And Mike Matheson for the Abs. So, I mean, that's a rocket. I didn't realize he had that type of shot, and to be able to have that type of weapon in this lineup on special teams, I mean, damn.
I mean,
That's all I have to
yes.
say is damn.
Yeah. So you're saying that, Gibo, you're braver than I thought you were because
Wow.
you used to stand there in front of that. No,
Yes.
John Carlson, I mean, obviously that's why he's been in Washington his entire career. I mean, he was a fixture on that power play. I mean, a very good defender. He's a big guy. I mean, he's like, sometimes you look at players like, oh, he's pretty big. You stand next to John Carlson. He's a really big guy. And so, but he's, it's part of his, his specialty is being able to unload that cannon from the point. Sometimes you don't need the hardest shot. You just need to be able to get the shot through traffic, which he does too. You'll see him get wrist shots through from the point. But if he gets a chance to tee it up, I mean, sometimes it's just playing the odds. If I can unload this at 100 miles an hour, sometimes guys are very brave trying to block shots, especially in playoffs. But sometimes if they know who's shooting, it may say, okay, I'm going to get out of the way and give my goalie a clear look at this. And then, so if the goalie sees that, I mean, it's hard to stop a 100-mile-an-hour shot, coming in at you and controlling the rebound. Like you can stop it. NHL goalies can stop that shot depending on its placement. But the fact is like, okay, I can stop it or it hits me. Where does that puck go? And can I control that rebound? Can I cover that rebound? And usually the answer is no. I mean, usually it's like my first job is to block the shot. Second, I have to just react if I can't cover up the rebound or get it to the corner. So, but yeah, that's a big time shot. I think I had read, and I think Evan Bouchard up from the Oilers I thought he had like a 98 point something mile an hour shot up until the last game or so. But there's some guys out there who can kind of really whistle the puck from the blue line, and it causes havoc, especially for rebounds, and gives opportunity to teams. But yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't know because John Carlson's been in Washington in all those years. So Ducks fans are getting a nice look at their newest acquisition and who's certainly paying big dividends offensively and defensively.
All right, we won't mess around with the East, but certainly touch on the West for a minute, which the Avs, they sweep the Kings. Surprise.
Yay.
No surprise, and nothing against the Kings, but the Avs are that good. So it didn't, I mean, you kind of expected they were going to move on. Not necessarily sweep, but certainly move on. And they're going to play the winner of the Stars and the Wild, who, by the way, tied at 2 games apiece, which is no surprise. I mean, that's a battle with those two teams.
Yeah, it sure is. And I've heard, Colorado, Minnesota, Dallas, kind of all talking, they're the players, management, fans, like, hey, we're getting the shaft because this should be like a conference.
We were just talking about that. They're going to play
these
two guys. Yeah. One of those two teams. I mean, that's going to be a battle.
Yeah. I mean, Minnesota and Dallas are thinking I mean, I know people say unfair, and maybe that's not, it's too strong of a word. But it is, that's a tough road. And I mean, I guess the beauty of the NHL is that there's really no easy path to the Stanley Cup and to win that Stanley Cup. So if you're going to win it, you're going to be tested along the way. And, I mean, sometimes it's, that seeding when you're trying to finish, and can you get home ice advantage? And that's why I was such a big proponent for the Ducks trying to hang on to that first place in the Pacific, to be able to get home ice advantage, or even second in the Pacific to have home ice. It may not turn out to be that important for this team. They just seem to be able to play no matter where they go. They just put their jerseys on and lace them up and go out and try to win. So, but yeah, I think that, hockey's been so great to watch that series. I mean, I actually thought that Dallas was going to go up. They had the lead 2-1 with, several minutes left in the game, and Minnesota found a way to tie that game up. One of the Foligno brothers Marcus
Really
was able
nice.
to
Yeah.
tuck in the game tire. And then, of course, and over time, you just never know, right? I mean, some teams could have 10 shots and, no goals. And then the other team gets one great opportunity and score. So, I mean, it's the greatest thing. I mean, I'm so happy that they played 20-minute overtime,
I know.
5-on-5, that they have not tried to adjust the Stanley Cup playoffs to be 5-minute overtime with anything less than 5-on-5. So even though you got to stay awake, Frenchie, sometimes for single, double, triple, quad overtimes, this time of year, there's nothing better. Just, calling sick the next morning.
And in the Ducks Oilers bracket, winner of this series will face the winner of Utah and Vegas. And by the way, the Mammoth right now leading that series 2-1 as we record this podcast. And speaking of loud fan bases, you mentioned, the Ducks. I mean, we've been to Vegas. We've done those games. I mean, it's insane there. I can't imagine what it's like right now in Utah for that expansion franchise to be A, in the postseason, B, be leading in their first round matchup with the Vegas Golden Knights. So whoever can get through this series with the Ducks and Oil, there's two great fan bases that they're going to be, subject to when it comes to Utah and Vegas.
Yeah, like I said, the path doesn't get easy. Both those teams, if the Ducks are to advance, and hopefully when this airs, we can giggle and say, "Hey, I'm so happy they advanced. They ended it in 5 games." But I guess that's the thing is Ducks
I
going
know, right?
into that game. Edmonton's not going to roll over, and the Edmonton fans are going to
Well, and you
be
have Connor
whatever.
McDavid, you have Draisaitl. They're not, and they've been to the finals the last 2 years. McDavid's window. I mean, you told me this, right? I kept saying, oh, their window's closing or their windows, what? He's like, wait a second, you're 29 years old. Like,
Yeah.
hold on, what are you talking about windows here? Well, good point, Gibo. Yes, good point. But I feel like, doesn't it feel like they got to win now? I mean, this Edmonton team needs to get it done now.
Yeah. I mean, I listen. We could continue this show for another hour just to talk
Right.
about that. But yeah, I mean, you go to the Cup Finals twice, heartbreaking losses in those 2 finals. You feel like you're on the right track. Connor McDavid signs a very team-friendly 2-year extension, and not going into unrestricted free agent this summer, where everybody would be trying to get him. And so he did the team a favor, said, "I want to win the cup in this city for this team." And oh, by the way, I just opened up a bunch of cap space for you to go
Right.
fill
Yeah.
some spots
Good
that
point.
will help us win. They did a nice job. I think Jason Dickinson has been a real key pickup for them. He's battling a lower body injury. He was in a game, had a huge impact. He was out. He was back in for game 4. I think he's a guy that they need to have in the lineup. And I'm not placing the blame on the goaltending because this team is really deficient defensively. And that's not just all on the defense. It's their collective defensive systems. So any goalie going in there is going to have a tough time, but they didn't go and get a really top-rated goaltender, kind of pay the price to get somebody. I mean, heck, we talked about it for years that John Gibson could have fit that role, I think, very well. Edmonton never pulled the trigger. Who knows what happens in the backroom dealings and why something never materialized. Tristan Jarry, I think he's a multi-cup winner in Pittsburgh, right? So he's struggling. So it's evident it's not the goaltending, but they didn't show Connor McDavid that they were going to go in, push all the chips in, and then really make a push for somebody that was out there that could have been a better upgrade to their goaltending. So there's a lot of things on the line. I mean, I think management could have it could be kind of like the Boston Red Sox. There could be a lot of people being swept out of that front office and coaching positions in Edmonton if the Ducks do finish them off.
I am going to end where we began, and I'm going to answer my question to you first.
Go right ahead.
Talking about the replay of the goal in game 4, right? I was talking to my wife about this, going, well, there's other camera angles that we are not privy to. To my knowledge, in the NFL, we are privy to pretty much every single camera angle that they show when it comes to it, to get both feet in, to the ball
Yeah.
across the line, whatever it is. I would like to see the fans, now that we know that there are cameras out there and everything, I want to see every angle. Gibo, I want to see what they're seeing. And I probably could create an argument for why they don't want us to see it, but I think we should be able to see every damn angle when it comes to the puck crossing the line so we can see what they're saying. What do you say?
It would become non-controversial. Like if we could see, and for everybody, for the world, both teams, fan bases, players. I mean, again, we can speculate that puck is in the net. I think there's no doubt about that. But if conclusive evidence from the NHL and just said, hey, these
I
are
wanna
our
see it.
cameras. We're
Yep.
going to put it out to our social media. We hear a lot of backlash. We're going to put this completely to rest. And here it is. And I mean, I think you're on to something, Frenchie. I think that would be,
Come on.
I mean, I think like if you're going to take the time to review these things, don't leave players, teams, fans all in the dark about, was it or wasn't it? I mean, you have to live with the end result. Both teams have to move on. That's the thing about, sports is that, okay, you can't do anything about what's in the past. You can only look to the future. And that's what you can have any kind of, say in and termination of how the outcome's going to be. But yeah, I agree. I think if there is technology that they're not sharing, they should
Yes.
certainly put it out there.
All right. Well, this has been Hockey Talk, brought to you by the Mask
It
the
was
Mic.
it was
for
hard
the
to
last-
talk about anything else.
We kind of went into this thing going, this is what we are going to talk about, and rightfully so, as we move on to Game 5. And like you mentioned, Gibo, by the time this airs, Game 5 will be in the books.
Yes.
And next time we come on next week, I would like to continue talking about playoff hockey. That would be nice.
That would be. Hey, and Charles Barkley, we haven't had him on the show yet, but he said, I'm not watching this NBA playoff. It's too boring. So he's been all in on the NHL and the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we got Sir Charles.
I like it. Sir
Yes.
Charles. Yeah, we'll put the ask out and see what happens. Hey, well, listen, if Sir Charles wants to watch us, he can certainly tune into our YouTube channel at The Mask the Mic. And also we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Gibo, again, it's been good catching up. Thanks for being boots on the ground for the postseason. You and I have at least one more postgame or pregame show coming up.
Yes.
So that will be exciting. And we will, as mentioned, keep our fingers crossed and look to next week to chat some hockey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, good vibes.
Good vibes for everybody.
Yeah.
And go Ducks.
And go Ducks.